numero uno factor about learning how to beat Ferrari in Le Mans. And it is the 2005 Ford GT. So, I'm gonna ask you one question. Have you ever known what it's like to see a Ford GT? Well, I'm gonna tell you why. The Ford GT, also known as the GT40, was a dominant American supercar icon that is known for one thing: beat Ferrari in the 24 hours of Le Mans, which is a 24-hour race that took place in the city of, well, you know who, Le Mans. So, in 1966, Ford was having a problem about beating Ferrari in Le Mans, and that was in the time when Ford wanted to buy the Ferrari company. But Enzo Ferrari had a big thumbs down and said it was a red flag, and they ran out of their way and continued dominating the race for almost like 2 years. This made Ford furious. So what they did was build a revolutionary supercar that would take down Ferrari and teach them a hardcore lesson of how Americans are better than Italian race cars. The project was called Building the Fastest Car That Has Ever Lived Up to Its Name. And that car lived up to its name as the GT40. The GT40, also known as the Ford Grand Touring Sports Car, was a road and racetrack performance supercar that was basically a revolutionary weapon that was used by Ford to take down Ferrari in Le Mans. The Ford GT40 uses a small block 8 valve engine, or should I say it was a V8 engine. This American supercar was basically the revolutionary reason of why Ferrari lost its way in the race. And guess what? Ford really beat Ferrari at that time in the 1960s. Among the people that did help Ford make the Ford GT40 a successful race car was former auto driver Carroll Shelby. There was also another guy that did help make the Ford GT40 a lot faster: Christian Bale. If you have seen Christian Bale before, then you would ask yourself, who is Christian Bale and why him in the GT? Well, it's because of one thing. Christian Bale was a former US military soldier during World War II. So later on in the year of the 1960s, he would go on to be crowned as a race car driver. And guess what? He actually voices the legendary driver Ken Miles. If you don't know who Ken Miles is, then you would obviously forget that Ken Miles was voiced by Christian Bale in the movie Ford vs. Ferrari. So about Ford vs. Ferrari, it's a movie that was based on a true motorsport story in the 1960s during Le Mans racing. So it's actually quite true. Ford vs. Ferrari took place in Le Mans in the real world during 1966. Then later on in the 1996, over the past few months, Ford GT40s were the only race cars that were allowed to beat Ferrari in Le Mans. I paid a lot of respect for the Ford GT40. The Ford GT40 was definitely one of the most revolutionary sports cars of its era during the 1960s all the way to the early present. So, what are the odds about the GT40? The GT40 was a rear mounted engine supercar that was basically compared itself with other supercars like the Lamborghini, and actually the McLaren was also a rear mounted sports car. In fact, America wanted the Ford GT40 to finally beat Ferrari in Le Mans, which actually did happen. The Ford GT40 wasn't just a supercar icon, it was also a supercar icon for drivers and car enthusiasts such as myself. What I expect from the original Ford GT40 concept is the Ford GT40 was the next generation supercar that dominated Le Mans racing in 24 hours. And this may prove to the actual point that Ford did beat Ferrari in Le Mans. So that begs you the question, what would happen if Ferrari lost to Ford if the Ford GT40 was built? Well, here's your answer. It would mean everything about Ford because Ford does not allow Ferrari to win, and the only way to make Ford win was build the Ford GT40 along with Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles. If you rather be on terms of what do you think is better, America or Italy? Well, it definitely would be America because America is known for making the most popular cars at the time during the 1960s and 70s. Ford in the 1960s got up with the Mustang. In the 1980s, there was the Ford F-Series trucks. And from what I can tell, the Ford GT40 was definitely a successful race car at that time. What Ferrari doesn't colloquially understand about the Ford GT40 is that Ken Miles was actually the one driving in the movie. And during half of the race, Christian Bale's bloody door won't even close. And this actually happened during the real race. Imagine that you're driving a race car but only to realize that the driver door doesn't seem to close. And the only way to fix that is to pull up to the pits and fight for first place, which actually did happen. I don't obviously get why the door wouldn't even close in the first place, but I guess it was crucial. The Ford GT40 wasn't just a supercar icon or anybody's daily driver supercar. It was a supercar icon that revolutionized Italian brands like Ferrari. And I can obviously tell you this, Ford doesn't lose to anyone, especially not losing against Ferrari, because Ford did not like that. And their wish came true by driving the GT40 in Le Mans. Every car has a story behind them. Every car has a character. And every car has a win or lose. Strengths, weaknesses, prowess, contributions, and skills. The Ford GT40 was definitely the most iconic race car in the 1960s all the way to 2005. I don't obviously get why Ferrari would lose to a car that is so overwhelming. But the Ford GT proved the point that you can't actually beat anything else, but rather revolutionize the entire world with a GT40. So, shortly after the victory at Le Mans, after another win by Ferrari, it wasn't long before Christian Bale suffered a tragic accident while doing a J-turn with the Ford GT40. What I obviously don't want to know of how long it took for Ford to know that is that Ken Miles died a long time ago in the 1960s after trying to practice a J-turn. He ended up broken his neck and getting thrown from the car and he died. That was so sad. In fact, whatever happened to the Christian Bale car now? No one knows. According to my information, it was no longer used in the movie. This is likely the fact that the car was obviously taken away, left in storage, or possibly abandoned after filming was ended. So I'm guessing that the car left the production shortly after the film was done. Another fact is it's a replica, not the original car. The movie primarily used for filming scenes, particularly those featuring Bale's character driving the car the whole time. I sure am gonna miss Christian Bale as Ken Miles, but who knows? Even though Ken Miles died a long time ago in the 1960s, his legacy lives on as the greatest driver of the Ford GT40 has ever known. And From what I can tell, the Ford GT40 still dominates the era today as the 2017 GT40 Le Mans edition. I wanted to say thank you to Christian Bale for all of the things that he have done for Ford versus Ferrari and everyone else too. All legends die between young age, middle, or late age. I'm gonna miss you, Christian Bale. I hope you rest in peace. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you go comment, like, and sub to the channel.